Hello, I'm Bob McMaster. Welcome to another in a series of short videocasts on Edward Hitchcock, this one entitled The Descendants of Edward and Orra White Hitchcock. In this presentation, I'll trace the Hitchcock family through 4 generations, right up to the early 20th century. Edward Hitchcock was one of the most eminent scientists of 19th century America. He taught at Amherst College for nearly 40 years and served as the 3rd president of the college. A pioneer in the fields of geology and paleontology, he was the first American scientist to embrace the theory of continental glaciation and the first to find evidence of dinosaurs in North America. Orra White and Edward Hitchcock met at Deerfield Academy, where they both were employed in 1816. Orra was a talented artist, but also trained in science and mathematics. Edward and Orra White Hitchcock were married in Amherst, Massachusetts in 1821. Days later, the couple traveled 20 miles or so to Conway, Massachusetts, where Edward took up his new post as junior pastor of the Congregational Church of Conway. The Hitchcock's first child was born in Conway in May 1822. They named him Edward. Sadly, little Edward died in 1824, just a few weeks short of his 2nd birthday. The loss was devastating to his parents. The depth of their pain and their struggle to make sense of their loss are evidenced in Reverend Hitchcock's sermon a few days after the death, entitled The Sovereignty of God. Thus far I had preceded my hearers in the composition of this discourse when I was called away to witness in the prostrated agonies and final removal of an only child, a painful exhibition of the sovereign dominion of Jehovah. If there is one feeling within us stronger than the rest, it is a sense that we deserve that punishment, and it lends smarting poignancy to the wound to know that the arrow which has pierced us passed first through the heart of our child. The couple's 2nd child, Mary, was born just a few months later. Shortly after her birth, the Hitchcocks moved to Amherst, where Edward received a faculty appointment at Amherst College. Mary attended Amherst Academy, then entered Mount Holyoke Female Seminary in South Hadley, later to become known as Mount Holyoke College. Mary lived with her parents for a number of years, caring for them in their final years. Sometime after her father's death, she moved to Hanover, New Hampshire, where she lived with her brother Charles and his family for over 30 years until her death in 1899. Mary had artistic talent and is perhaps best known for this painting of the Amherst College campus. Edward and Orra's 3rd child, Catherine, was born in 1826. Like her older sister, Catherine also attended Amherst Academy and Mount Holyoke. In 1852, she married the Reverend Henry Martin Storrs, an Amherst graduate. The couple lived for a time in Cincinnati, Ohio, then in Brooklyn, New York, and for the last several decades of their lives in Orange, New Jersey. The Storrs had 4 children. Catherine Hitchcock Storrs died in Orange, New Jersey in 1895. Her obituary describes her as a woman of marked literary attainments. Born in 1828, Edward Hitchcock Jr. was the first child to be christened in the newly constructed Johnson Chapel at Amherst College. He attended Amherst Academy, then Williston Seminary in East Hampton, known today as Williston Northampton School. He graduated from Amherst College in 1848, then attended Harvard Medical School in Boston, where he earned his MD degree. He taught at Williston for nearly a decade before receiving an appointment to the faculty of Amherst College. Edward Jr. was professor of hygiene and physical education at Amherst College for nearly 50 years and well known as a pioneer in college physical education. Doc Hitchcock, as he was known to his students, was well liked. He was particularly known for his lecture on human reproduction and sex, which his students termed his smut lectures. Edward Jr. was affable and easygoing. His handwritten memoir is full of examples of his sense of humor, as well as candid comments on himself, his parents, and Amherst College. I have transcribed the entire memoir, and it can be found on my webpage under transcriptions. Edward Jr. married Mary L. Judson in 1853. The couple had 10 children, 3 of whom died at an early age. In 1899, Mary published The Genealogy of the Hitchcock Family. Edward Jr. died in Amherst in 1911. An obituary in the Springfield Republican wrote of Edward Jr., "Great-hearted, sympathetic, quaint, shrewd, human. His place in the hearts of Amherst men has been unique and will always be sacred." In 1832, Orra gave birth to a baby boy, but he died on the day he was born. He was not named, but on his gravestone is inscribed, "He has a name in heaven." Jane Elizabeth Hitchcock was born in 1833. She attended Amherst Academy and Mount Holyoke. She and her sister Catherine were schoolmates of Emily Dickinson, both at Amherst Academy and at Mount Holyoke. Jane married Amherst graduate Granville B. Putnam in 1864. The couple lived in the Boston area. Granville was an educator, while Jane devoted herself to charitable causes, including Children's Friend Society and the Women's Board of Missions. She died at Pigeon Cove in Rockport, Mass. in 1894. In a tribute in the Congregationalist, a pastor and friend wrote of Jane, "We think of her in all her life as a woman of a rare mold, a fine nature, a delicate taste, keenly appreciative of the best and most beautiful things of the world, flowers, music, poetry, the Bible. She was a constant reader of 2 books, Nature and Revelation, and in this she was a true child of her father." Charles Henry Hitchcock was born in 1836. He attended Amherst Academy and Williston Seminary. He earned a B.A. from Amherst in 1856 and an M.A. in 1858, an honorary Ph.D. from Lafayette College in 1870, and an honorary LL.D. from Amherst College in 1896. Charles became interested in his father's paleontological research at an early age, publishing several articles on the subject. From 1857 to 1861, he worked on the Vermont Geological Survey, which his father directed, carrying out most of the field work alongside Albert D. Hager and authoring a large part of the final report. He subsequently was appointed State Geologist of New Hampshire and completed that state's geological survey in 1878. He joined the faculty of Dartmouth College around 1868 and held that post for nearly 40 years. In 1862, Charles married Martha Barrows of North Andover, Massachusetts. The couple had 5 children. Martha died in 1892, after which Charles married Martha's sister, Charlotte Malvina Barrows. Upon his retirement from Dartmouth in 1908, the couple moved to Hawaii, where Charles conducted research on the volcanoes of Hawaii. Their 2 younger daughters, Martha and Aline, eventually moved to Hawaii as well. Charles died there in 1919. A friend and former student, Warren Upham, wrote in 1919, "Honored, revered, beloved friend, with whom I have had intimate association through 50 years. First under your teaching at Dartmouth, and later as your assistant in the survey of my native state, I have now to say gratefully, farewell. Your life devoted to science, education, and Christian service of the state, the college, and the wide world has been an inspiration, a beneficent guidance and example to your hundreds of students and to all workers in geology." Emily Hitchcock Terry attended Mount Holyoke Female Seminary for 3 years. After the deaths of her parents, she attended Cooper Union in New York City. She married Reverend Cassius M. Terry in 1870. The couple moved to Minneapolis, where their 1 child, Edward, was born in 1872 and died a few months later. Cassius died in 1881, after which Emily moved back to Massachusetts. She worked at Smith College from 1884 to 1909. She died in Northampton in 1921. Emily was an accomplished botanist and illustrator. Hitchcock scholar Daria Dorenzo writes, Emily Hitchcock Terry had a passion for flowers, and she loved to draw. Thus she had the core combination for a sound scientific botanist and a true botanical artist. She was a scientist like her well-known father, Edward, and an artist like her mother, Orra. Edward and Orra were blessed with some 20 grandchildren, including Catherine's children. Charles Bigelow Storrs attended Yale, studied law at Columbia, then worked as an attorney, a judge, and for a number of years as a member of the New Jersey legislature. He married Gertrude Maria Cleveland in 1897, and the couple lived most of their married life in Orange, New Jersey. They had one child. Catherine Storrs lived most of her adult life in Orange, New Jersey, where she was active in church and charitable work. Richard Salter Storrs attended Yale, then worked as an investment broker and banker. He married Anna Kingsbury Simpson in 1907 and lived in Orange, New Jersey. They had one child. Edward Jr. and Mary Hitchcock's children included Dr. Edward Hitchcock, who earned both BA and MA degrees from Amherst College, then went on to study medicine at Dartmouth College. He practiced in Amherst, then taught at Amherst College, Mass Agricultural College, and Cornell University. He married Ida Isabel Bering in 1882. After Ida's death, he married journalist Sarah D. Fuertes in 1888. Caroline Judson Hitchcock graduated from Mount Holyoke Female Seminary in 1880 and taught chemistry, biology, and physics for 40 years, first in Amherst, then in Meriden, Connecticut. She published many articles in scientific journals. Jane Elizabeth Hitchcock attended Mount Holyoke and Cornell University before enrolling at the New York Hospital Training School for Nurses, where she completed her studies in 1891. For more than 30 years, she was employed as a public health nurse and nurse supervisor at the New York Nurses Settlement. She became a nationally known leader in the field of public health nurse education, taught in nurse training programs, and wrote many articles on nursing education for professional journals. Dr. John Sawyer Hitchcock was a medical doctor who at one time was Calvin Coolidge's personal physician. He served in the Medical Corps during the Spanish-American War and was head of the Massachusetts State Board of Health Division of Communicable Diseases during the influenza pandemic of 1918 and 1919. He married Mary Waters Bryan in 1898. The couple lived in Northampton, Massachusetts. He died in 1928. Albert White Hitchcock, an 1898 graduate of MIT, served in Cuba during the Spanish-American War, then worked as an engineer for Western Electric. He married Charlotte Frillinghausen Emerson in 1903, and they lived for a time in Holland, Massachusetts. Albert died in 1942. The children of Charles and Martha Hitchcock included Maria Porter Hitchcock Allen, who attended Oberlin College Preparatory School in 1883-84 and graduated from Abbott Academy in Andover, Massachusetts in 1886. She married Frederick J. Allen in 1893. Martha Barrows Hitchcock graduated from Miss Wheelock School in Boston in 1898. She taught for a time in Hanover, New Hampshire, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. She moved to Honolulu, Hawaii in about 1900, where she studied at the College of Hawaii and taught in Honolulu. Eileen Lee Hitchcock graduated from Abbott Academy in Andover in 1893 and the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York in 1903. She taught kindergarten in Brooklyn, Hanover, and Honolulu. In about 1920, she and her sister moved to Palm Springs, California. After Eileen's death, Martha endowed a library to be known as Eileen's Library, the first public library in Palm Springs. Edward and Orra had 10 grandchildren, including Cleveland Hitchcock Storrs, son of Charles and Gertrude Storrs, Catherine Hitchcock, daughter of Dr. Edward and Sarah Hitchcock, and Edward B. Hitchcock, son of Edward and Ida Hitchcock. Edward B. was an author, journalist, and foreign correspondent for the Chicago Daily News and the Christian Science Monitor, and he married opera singer Myrna D. Charlo in 1921. Margaret R. Hitchcock Hemerson was the daughter of Dr. John and Mary Hitchcock. She was a graduate of Smith College, earned a master's degree in geology from Columbia, then taught geology and chemistry for many years. Later in life, she was a reference librarian at Smith College and curator of the collections of her grandfather, Dr. Edward Hitchcock. She married Henry Seeley Emerson in 1941. Pauline Hitchcock Klaus, the daughter of Albert and Charlotte Hitchcock, grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, and attended Smith College before pursuing a career as a social worker. She married Emil Klaus in 1934, and the couple lived for a time in Ohio. Maria Allen Storer graduated from Boston University and was a teacher in Massachusetts and in Maine. Charles H. Allen graduated from Boston University in 1919, received his Ph.D. from Harvard in 1924. He was a well-known and highly respected chemist who published many papers scientific papers in his lifetime. Through his 50 published books and several hundred articles in geology, paleontology, and religion, Edward Hitchcock proved to be one of the most prolific and influential writers of his time. Orra supported him with her art, creating thousands of drawings, woodcuts, and paintings that enhanced his work and his teaching. As we have seen, they passed those gifts along to future generations, many of whom excelled in the sciences, medicine, and art. For more information on Edward and Orra White Hitchcock, I invite you to visit my website, www.edwardhitchcock.com. On the transcriptions page, you will find my transcription of the memoir of Edward Hitchcock, Jr. On the resources page, you will find a link to more information on the Hitchcock Descendants. Hitchcockiana is a blog in which I record new information and insights into the lives of Edward, Orra, and their family. You might especially enjoy reading about my meeting a few years ago with Emily and Sawyer Hitchcock, great-great-great-great-grandchildren of Edward and Orra. I also invite you to read my book, All the Light Here Comes From Above, The Life and Legacy of Edward Hitchcock. It's the first biography ever written for Edward Hitchcock. I welcome comments, corrections, and possible additions to this presentation, especially from Hitchcock family members or anyone with information to share. I would be especially grateful to receive photographs of Mary Hitchcock, Catherine Hitchcock Storrs, and Jane Elizabeth Hitchcock Putnam to add to this presentation. Thank you very much for joining me today.